grade 7. I am Teacher Nels and I am here to guide you in this learning journey. Today, we will be talking about the voices of the verb. Yes, it's true. A verb has voices, the passive voice and the active voice. Our target most essential learning competency is use the passive voice and active voice meaningfully in varied contexts. Through this lesson, you will be able to identify the differences between active voice and passive voice. Transform an active voice sentence to passive voice and vice versa. Compose a short story using active and passive voice. Get your pen and paper and take note of important concepts you will learn from this lesson. The two most important elements of a sentence are the subject and the verb. Verb has two voices, either active voice or passive voice. Voices of the verb tell whether the subject of the sentence is the doer of the action or the receiver of the action. The two voices of the verb, active voice, passive voice. The active voice indicates that the subject of the sentence is the doer of the action. The passive voice indicates that the subject of the sentence is the receiver of the action. Example: active voice. The baby broke the glasses. Passive voice, the glasses were broken by the baby. In the active voice, the baby, which is the subject of the sentence, performs the action expressed by the verb. While in the passive voice, the glasses, which is the subject of the sentence, is the receiver of the action. Another example.
Active voice. Ariel pounded 5 bundles of rice. The subject of the sentence is Ariel. The verb is pounded. Ariel, which is the subject of the sentence, is the doer of the action. Passive voice. The sentence would become 5 bundles of rice were pounded by Ariel. In the passive voice, 5 bundles of rice becomes now the subject. Verb is were pounded. In the passive voice, the subject of the sentence is the receiver of the action, while the doer of the action is still Ariel, signaled by the word by. Another example, active voice. Lolo Julian makes tapoy for the wedding of his youngest son. In this sentence, the subject is Lolo Julian. It is singular, that is why the verb is makes. Lolo Julian, the subject of the sentence, is the doer of the action. If you transform that sentence into passive voice, it would become, the tapoy is made by Lolo Julian for the wedding of his youngest son. The subject now is tapoy, and the verb is made. Since it is a passive voice, the subject of the sentence is the receiver of the action, while the doer of the action is still Lolo Julian, indicated by the preposition by. Another example. People are using face masks daily. The subject here is people. And of course, since it is plural, the verb is are using. The subject of the sentence is of course the doer of the action. If you transform this into passive voice, it would become, face masks are being used daily. You notice that in the passive voice, the doer of the action is omitted. There are times when the doer of the action is not very important, it could be omitted. So in the passive voice, the subject now is face masks. And since it is plural, the verb is are being used. And of course, since it is a passive voice, the subject is the receiver of the action. Always remember that the active voice occurs when the subject of the sentence is the performer of the action. On the other hand, The passive voice indicates that the subject of the sentence is the receiver of the action.
Not all sentences can be changed to the passive voice. Only a sentence with a direct object can be transformed into passive voice. Example:
Lola Arcadio retold to us the story about Timacu the mountain. Lolo Arcadio retold what? The answer is the story about Timacu the mountain. That is why in the active voice, the subject is Lolo Arcadio, the verb retold, the direct object, the story about Timacu the mountain. If you are going to transform this into passive voice, the subject now becomes the story about Timacu the mountain. The verb now becomes was retold. And Lolo Arcadio is now the object of the preposition by. To change an active voice sentence to passive voice, look for the object of the sentence and use it as the subject of the sentence in the passive voice. You also need to change the form of the verb. The subject in the active voice will be the object of the preposition by.
in the passive voice, the passive verb is in the past participle form, introduced by the auxiliary verb be. Is, are, being, was, been. Always use the plural form of the verb if the subject is plural, and use singular verb if the subject is singular. In transforming active voice to passive voice and vice versa, always take note of the tense of the verb.
Simple present tense. In the active voice, the sentence is Minda gives me a woven cloth. The subject is Minda, the verb is gives, and the direct object a woven cloth. If you are going to transform this into passive voice, the sentence would now become a woven cloth is given to me by Minda. A woven cloth is now the subject of the sentence. And look what happened to the verb. It is now is given. Look at the pattern. You use is if the subject of the sentence is singular. Use are if the subject is plural, plus the past participle form of the verb. In this case, gives is the verb, its past participle form is given. A woven cloth that is singular, that is why you use is given. Woven cloths that is plural, use are given. Present continuous tense. In the active voice, Minda is giving Anna a woven cloth. Is giving is the verb in the present continuous tense. If you transform this into passive voice, it would become a woven cloth is being given to Anna by Minda. The verb now becomes is being given. Here is the pattern. Is, are, plus being, plus past participle form of the verb. A woven cloth is being given. Woven cloths are being given. Present perfect tense. Active voice. Minda has given Anna a woven cloth recently. The verb here is has given. In the passive voice, a woven cloth has been given to Anna by Minda recently. The verb now becomes has been given. This is the pattern also. You use has if the subject is singular. You use have if the subject is plural. And then add been plus the past participle form of the verb. Simple past tense. In the active voice, Minda gave me a woven cloth last December. The verb in the simple past tense is gave. In the passive voice, the verb now becomes was given. Here is also the pattern. Was or were plus the past participle form of the verb. Past continuous tense. In the active voice, Minda was giving Anna a woven cloth a while ago. The verb in the past continuous tense is was giving. If you transform this into passive voice, the verb now becomes was being given. Use was if the subject of the sentence is singular, were if plural, plus being plus the past participle form of the verb. Past perfect tense. Active voice. Minda had given Anna a woven cloth when we visited her. The verb in the past perfect tense is had given. Transform this into passive voice. The verb now becomes had been given. This is also the pattern. Had been plus the past participle form of the verb. Simple future tense. In the active voice, the verb in the simple future tense will give. Transform this into passive voice. The verb now becomes will be given. And of course, this is also the pattern, transforming an active voice sentence which is in the simple future tense to passive voice. Will be plus the past participle form of the verb.
Well done, class! Now, always remember that the voices of the verb focus on the function of the subject of the sentence, being either the doer of the action or the receiver of the action. Generally, active voice is more natural and easier to understand. It is used in academic writing because it is stronger. It makes writing more direct and forceful. On the other hand, passive voice is used when the doer of the action is unknown or unimportant. I am sure that you learned something today. Remember that you will be an effective communicator if you enhance your knowledge on the correct use of the passive voice and the active voice. Bye!